Good afternoon to everybody and welcome to this webinar co-hosted by Qube Learning and 12PR. Over the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour, we hope to help all of you employers with your apprenticeship communications within your business. I'm not going to say too much more than that because, like I say, we have other co-hosts on the session. Just want to do a small bit of housekeeping, and as and when you want to, or as and when prompted or asked, if you feel comfortable, if you could use the Q&A chat function on the sides of your screens, that would be much appreciated. We'll be monitoring that throughout the session. And finally, I am Holly Ponting, the Marketing Manager at Qube Learning. I'm just going to do a short intro with my colleague Elliot Roberts, and then we'll get started on the session. So over to you, Elliot.
Thanks, Holly. Hi, guys. I can see some of the attendee names that we already know, so hi, everybody. Some names I don't know, so hopefully by the end of it we will do. As Holly said, it's a joint presentation with 12PR about how we can communicate to our business in a better way, and there will be some questions and answers as we go through the presentation. So hope you enjoy, and speak to you at the end. Thank you. Over to you, Jessica.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both very much for your introduction. I'm Nikki Smith talking here, and as my colleague Jess, 12PR is actually celebrating its 25th anniversary in business this year, and in the whole time the consistent theme of our work has been that we've always worked in the education arena. In fact, our first client was UCAS, and we're delighted today to be working for Qube. And we really understand the importance of training, but also communicating training. One of our earliest clients was the National Council for Work Experience, and that was all about explaining the benefits, delivering the benefits of work experience. So today we're going to look at how to communicate and really supercharge your apprenticeship, because it's that communication piece which can really make the difference for you and them.
And hello, I'm Jessica. I'm the account director at 12PR. My background, I won the Young Communicator of the Year award a few years ago, and a big part of my role at 12PR is looking after our mentorship and our trainee scheme. So things like apprenticeships and interns are very close to my heart.
Okay, excuse me. So what we're going to cover today, this is a supercharged, super short webinar, but at the end, what we're going to cover today is identifying your target audiences. Who are you trying to reach? So we'll drill down into that, and understanding your key messages. What are you trying to reach?
And the second part of today's webinar is all about thinking about how we're going to communicate what we're trying to say. So once you've identified who you're trying to reach and what you're trying to say, it's thinking about how we're going to do that, and thinking about, and we've come up with a campaign idea. So 10 things apprenticeships can do for you. And we're going to walk you through how you can use this idea in lots of different ways. And finally, your campaign is only ever as good as your evaluation. So we're going to be looking at and answering that question, like, what does success look like when we finished our campaign?
So, and as Jess explained, those are the things we're going to cover. And at the end of it, we're going to come away with some tangible material, as Jess will explain.
So one of the things we want to make sure that you come away with is 4 handouts. And I'm sure Holly will correct me, but they'll either be available with the presentation when they're emailed to you afterwards, or they'll be available through a download at the end. But essentially, you'll get a case study approval template, the 10 things apprenticeships can do for you infographic. Actually, we have 2 versions of that. And we also have a press release template and an evaluation report template. And now we're going to tell you how you can use all those things.
So I'm sure, you've all experienced all the different people you need to talk to, but it's always really good to go through the theory of those things. So traditionally in PR, you always look at the 2, you divide your audience into 2, the internal audience and the external. Now, thinking about internal, who do you need to communicate to? And that really depends on what you're trying to say. For example, you might want to think, are there people that don't understand what you're doing? Actually, that you've got this apprenticeship program going? Are there people that you need to help your apprenticeships, that you need to communicate with to get them on board and deliver aspects of the training? Maybe they are pushing back a little bit, not understanding the benefits of what the apprenticeships can do for the company as a whole. Maybe you need to reach older audiences to get them to internal staff to help them understand that they could be applying for apprenticeships. So have a think about who you're actually trying to reach within the organisation. Is it people who are mentoring them? Is it the finance team? Maybe you're the HR department and you need to reach the PR team to communicate with them even. So think about who your internal audience is. And then externally, completely different audience. We often find for many of our clients that communicating about apprenticeships is a really positive thing to do in externally. You may find if a company's got, if somebody wants to buy a product, they might be much more inclined to buy from you if they know that you are supporting people through apprenticeships program. There's a huge amount of goodwill that people feel towards apprenticeship and what it means about how you're supporting people. So think about your external audience too. Who is it you're trying to? Is it customers or is it other people to join your apprenticeship scheme? So drill down into your audiences first of all. Be absolutely clear on who you're trying to reach.
So once we've answered that question, who are we trying to reach, and we've thought about our two different audience groups, we're then thinking about those key messages. And I think a lot of people can get hung up on the term sort of key message, but really when we're breaking that down, we're actually thinking about what can apprenticeships do for your audiences? What apprenticeship benefits will resonate with your audience? And so now I thought would be quite a good time to test that chat box. And so I'd like to know, you know, just from the top of your head, can you think of what apprenticeship benefits would resonate with each of those different audiences types that we've already talked about, whether it's current staff or whether it's potential staff? So maybe if we just have 2 minutes for people to use that chat function. I mean, when we're thinking about benefits, it could be anything from, like what Nikki was talking about, it can be really motivating to work with apprenticeships. Who is that going to resonate with? Is that going to be an external audience or an internal audience? I know my husband, he works with quite a lot of apprentices. He's a gardener for the Oxford department of the Parks department, and he actually his better days are always the ones where he's working with what he calls fresh blood.
Yeah, it's interesting. And some people really enjoy training, but also then there is people like to think that you're committing to young people, that you're doing it, and sometimes it helps you explore new processes. Perhaps you need to train your apprentice on a particular area of process or systems, and the opportunity to look at that and sort out your processes and explain it can really help to clarify what you're doing and set up new good systems internally.
Yeah, we've had a really good, interesting point that you're right, that it is really good for potential employees to see an employer investing in their workforce, and the fact that there is a huge plus.
Mm. Yeah, could be the deciding factor if somebody's looking to join, possibly been fortunate enough to be shortlisted for 2 roles, maybe if they've got the chance to upskill in one, it's maybe the deciding factor to go for that role than the other.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we've often talked about the fact that not a lot of current employees actually appreciate that apprenticeships are not just for new staff, that they can actually upskill while still earning. So I think that's another interesting kind of key point. Well, I tell you what, we've got a summary of those benefits. So let's take a look at those. So here we are, we've got 2 lots of kind of key messages or benefits for those 2 staff. We've got internal audiences. So we already mentioned about the fact that you can upskill whilst working. It's that on-the-job experience, thinking about transferable skills. Obviously, there's the increase in salary. You know, they're all relevant to our current staff. And then if we're thinking about our external staff, you know, so potential people potential employees, you know, there is that idea that there is that first rung on the job ladder. There's always going to be some benefits which correlate to both groups, you know, so developing of transferable skills and the on-the-job experience. But what Nikki was talking about earlier is that actually the fact that you run an apprenticeship program is really good PR for your local community, you know, so it's a really good way of, you know, you get good kudos for that.
Yeah, so So have a look at the key messages. It might be worth drilling down into the type of apprenticeship that you have, obviously, because if they're doing particular skills, there might be certain benefits in your quality control. There might be particular benefits in the creative approach that you apply or the productivity that you're bringing. So drilling down and actually listing 10 bullet points. What are the benefits that this apprenticeship position is bringing? Can be really helpful for you fine-tuning it. And do also always look for evidence, because it's one thing saying, oh, we really support our apprenticeships and that motivates our staff, but look for the evidence behind that, because anyone can say anything. But you may find your evidence is, and it can be a simple thing, it can be that you spoke to their line manager and their line manager said, we had a great day yesterday, we were really buzzing and came out motivated from a brainstorm. That is actually the evidence. Or equally, a piece of evidence could be that your apprentice found a new way of doing a particular task, you've been doing it, challenged you to look at something differently and said, why don't we try doing it this way? So your piece of evidence would be that you came up with a new work process, and the message is that they increase productivity, say, and your evidence is we had this meeting where this system was reviewed. So it's just a question of collecting bullet points and looking at that. So then going forward, how do you put that into a communication plan? Well, the first thing we would say is have a look at the channels available, because where can you actually communicate? I mean, the obvious, you might have a company website, but that might not be the channel you want to use. All sorts of different channels, whether it's text, social media, and intranet. How many of you have intranet? I wonder if you could put some comments in the chat box now about the channels available to you. For example, would you consider Facebook, or do you not use that for any company communication? I wonder what anyone's thoughts are on that, and they can think of or suggest some communication channels.
Yeah. I think often as well, some really unusual ones. Sorry, Holly, what were you going to say?
No, I was basically going to go along something, a similar line sort of thing with remote working. I think a lot of companies have discovered new platforms and means of communication and so forth. So it's even using Microsoft Teams, the announcement feature, for example, or having a Teams section on Teams itself to be able to communicate those messages. That there might be new ones literally in the last 12 to 6 months that people have discovered.
I definitely we find like someone's mentioned weekly catch-up meetings. I mean, we have like a daily catch-up meeting, because now that we're all working from home and we're all remote working, it's like a really important session to kind of regroup and share that kind of news, whether it's, I've got a new cat or we've got a new client, it's all about kind of sharing that kind of news in those sort of spaces.
But those are good ones. The reason I was wanted people to focus on the communication channels and list them out is that they can be different for different audiences. For example, we work for an organisation in the logistics area, and they have a large fleet of drivers, obviously, but the way they communicate with them is by text message. So you might in your communication plan say, okay, we're going to communicate by our main channel is going to be text. And if you're going to do that, you then have to decide what's the frequency. Do you want to communicate once a week? Do you have already a format? Another example is a lot of organizations, the main place people might gather, if people aren't connected on the internet, because we're assuming not everybody spends all day like us in front of a screen. There will be some people obviously who are out on the floor working. So something like the staff canteen and a poster might be the one place they see stuff. So your communication plan's got to look about your messages, but also the different channels available to them. I've put some here. Jess, did you want to highlight anything on this particular page?
Yeah, and also I think it's an element of thinking about those different audiences and what communication channels they might see. So for internal staff, like the intranet or the posters in the canteen are going to be a really vital source. But for those external audiences, we need to think about different communication channels. So if you're trying to reach the local young workforce for an apprenticeship program, you might need to think about social media, because social media is dominated by the use of young people. Or it might be that you're trying to reach another age bracket, and you might find that your local newspaper actually is the most effective means of communicating or reaching that target group.
So having identified the community, so you've thought about your key messages and benefits, you've got the communication channels, and you should be laying over that the frequency that you want to communicate. And also in your communications plan, a good thing is to have a look at your annual calendar as well. Somebody will have the list of events that you have at your organisation, but you may have standard events that you know are happening. And at each one of those, you might challenge yourself to say, what can we communicate about our apprenticeships here? What's the positive messages that we can go forward? So you're starting to populate your communication plan with messages and benefits.
So one of the other things then we've wanted to talk about was how you could use case studies, because actually case studies really bring to life when you're trying to talk about your apprenticeship program. And often, you know, the case studies really kind of show those successes. So one of our first handouts is a case study template, and you can use this right at the beginning when your apprentice starts. So the idea is that you would sit down with him or her, talk about maybe what made them join the program, what they're looking forward to, and what particular areas they want to kind of learn new skills in. But also a really vital part of this case study template is the approvals process, because you don't want to capture all the wonderful information, get some really great comments, and then them to say, oh, actually, I'm not that comfortable with using my face on with using my photograph on social media. So this template will walk you through the approvals process. And it's important to think about whether you can use their information in print media, whether it's on social media or on their website. And again, there's some nice tick boxes there for you to fill in. And the other thing is that you can then build on this. So it's not simply a case of like you fill in the form, that's it, job done. As they move through the apprenticeship program, it's good to have check-ins with your apprentice, to sit down, talk to them how they're finding it, talk to them about what the benefits they found, what challenges they may have overcome, and all that information can be captured in one place.
Yeah, so thanks, Jess. I can't emphasize important enough the need to do this right from the very start. So, I mean, I'm sure you will have an induction pack or training plan for your apprenticeships. So include this at the very beginning, because it's one of those things that can go and that you can miss, and so do start. And also, as to highlight, I know Jess mentioned this, but asking permission to tell their story, but specifying the different communications channels, because you'll be amazed, some people will be happy with social media, others not. And do, if you can capture a photo, have them confirm that they're happy for you to use that. And things, the reason the case study is particularly, I wanted to mention the case study is because I would hope a lot of you might be thinking about going for awards as well. And one of the hard things about entering an award, I mean, awards are fantastic for your company. They showcase best practice and so on. And there are lots of awards for the apprenticeships generally, and they're so motivating for the apprentice and for your organisation. But having the case study material really helps, because otherwise I'm sure you can imagine you're going back retrospectively and looking at it. And key quotes from things like appraisals or the catch-up meetings Jess said are really good things to pop down in your case study, because you've got them in one particular place. And you maybe each time say, can I quote you on that? Because obviously if you something in an appraisal is confidential, but if you take it out of that context and put it in, say, oh, that would be a lovely case study going forward, can I add that to that with permissions? Then you are covered. You must always ensure you got permission, but do build that in from the very start. Thanks, Jess.
So now that we've talked about how we can use case studies, we now come to our kind of campaign idea. So the main thrust of this is all about the 10 things apprenticeships can do for you. So it's really thinking about those two different groups of audiences, thinking about those two different types of key messages, or the benefits, if you want to think of it like that, for those different groups. And here we've captured them on 2 infographics. And in the next couple of slides, we're going to show you how you can use these infographics. So the first one is internal audiences. So for example, on the infographic, we've got 10 statistics and statements, clues in the name, and just 3 that I've pulled out here. So 81% of employers said apprentices make their business more productive. Apprentices rise through the ranks quicker as employers recognise hardworking apprentices. Apprenticeships are not just for new employees, what we were talking about earlier, and you can upskill at work whilst still earning. So you've got these key stats and you've got these statements, but what we're going to do with them? So a few ideas of how you could then use these to reach your internal audience, so your current staff. You might write a blog post which could be posted on your intranet or included in a staff newsletter, and you would reference some of the different statistics and statements in the infographic as part of that blog post and post the infographic alongside it. You could use this infographic as a poster in its own right and put it up in the staff canteen. You could even chunk it up into bite-sized pieces and use them as social media posts. So you could use one of the key images. It's probably quite easy to do through a quick screenshot of one of the key logos or icons on the infographic. Use the statement as the accompanying social media text. Or even you could use them as text alerts. So you could text the statistics to your workforce and use it as a way of signposting people to further information, whether it's a web page that you've created about the apprenticeship programme or the blog post that you've written.
Okay, similarly, in the same way with the external audiences, we suggest that we're proposing that you can use the infograph to take some of those statistics and then add on your own information to it. So employers think qualified apprenticeships are more employable than those with other qualifications. So you can talk about that. You can then put some granular information about what you're doing and how the apprenticeships work with you. Another statistic which is also really powerful for recruiting the best calibre apprenticeships is the lifetime career earning information. So you could see how you could incorporate that statistic in a press release saying that you are recruiting apprenticeships or celebrating the fact that you have started a new apprenticeship. I wonder if anyone's got any comments on the sort of statistics that you see or the material that you think would be most useful going out. Do pop anything in the chat box while we're talking.
The other thing I'd add is that we do have 2 infographics. I wasn't sure whether that was clear, that we do have one that's aimed at your external staff and we do have one that's aimed at the internal staff members as well.
As well, we talk about this. I wonder how many of you are already doing these communication processes, if any, or any examples of really good successes that you've achieved. Again, do pop any thoughts in or any challenges. If you've had any pushback from communication, do let us know. It'd be interesting to discuss them among the group.
So one of the things that Nikki mentioned there was about a press release. So using those kind of key statistics in a press release, which you could then use with your local media. So here we have a press release template. It's got some suggested copy that is quite easy for you to amend and make and personalize to your own individual programs. But the important thing to think about whenever putting together the press release, of course, is the heading. And the second thing is, in that body copy, we're answering 4 key questions: what, when, where, and why. And that's what we've done in our template. And the other way that you can use the template is that you could also adapt this text for a blog post. So it could be used in a sort of a number of different ways. And as you can see on my screenshot here, there's a few red spaces for you to update, to tweak, to fit your own program. And also, I'd also suggest if you have started with your case studies, this is a brilliant opportunity to include a quote.
So Jess has mentioned, for example, blogs. We've mentioned sending things out to local newspapers, but another format, depending on who you're trying to reach, we go back to your target audiences, who you want to reach, thinking about the different platforms. You can use, different communication channels. The press release template is something you can use and send to your local radio station too. I know over lockdown they say radio figures have been going up a lot. So again, depending on who you're trying to reach, what time of day, what type of person, what type of role they're going for. There are lots of different communication channels, but the core information that will help you get cut through is the press release template, because follow that format. It's got everything that they want to see, people are used to seeing in this format, and obviously all your contact details and what have you, so that they can come back to you for more if they need. So I wondered if anyone, I guess we've covered the idea of the 10 things that the apprenticeships can do, but if anyone's got any other comments, any comments they wanted to add, please do let us know.
Yeah, I would be interested to know if, you know, having talked about the infographics and talked about different ways that you could use it, that you've had a brainwave. Maybe you've thought actually that infographic would work really well on X that we already have access to. It would be interested to know if anyone, yeah, has had any kind of light bulb moments.
Yeah, I think using a combination of what you've just mentioned, actually, Nikki, with the radio piece, potential radio piece, and taking the case study and building that as essentially as a selling piece for the radio to hopefully want to use you or your students as an example, even using key points from the infographic within the case study. So you could combine the two resources. So
also the long-term planning of that. I mean, National Apprenticeship Week, obviously, which has passed this year, but it's a really great idea for some good local PR, or to help people that seeing that coming up thinking, well, maybe it's now the time to do it. That's the sort of piece with a bit of preparation. You can go to your local radio station and talk about what your organisation is doing on the ground. I mean, I know obviously if you're a big multinational or national organisation, nevertheless, you're recruiting locally for, say, some particular stores or location. So local PR activity can really help with recruitment. Plus, obviously, it's just a positive thing. I mean, at the moment, people are looking for good news stories. This is the ultimate good news story, and the commitment to training for people is one of those things. So do have a look at how you can use that to sort of supercharge both getting the right calibre of apprenticeships in and telling people about yourself. It's a great way to get positive PR for your organisation.
Yes, someone's mentioned about using the infographic in an e-shot to current staff, or even possibly with a link to the recruitment page, which is a really good idea. And also, I think that's quite a good way of like showing that, because like, I mean, I'm still boggled by the fact that a lot of people don't realise that you can be an apprenticeship if you're a current employee. You don't have to be a new employee to be an apprentice. So yeah, that's a really great idea. So just conscious of time and 41 minutes, I want to make sure that we've got enough time for questions and answers at the end. So I'm going to click on to thinking about that evaluation. Now we follow. Here I have a template for our ACE campaign report format, where we look at capturing action, conversion or results, and also the evaluation. And the idea around the evaluation is that it helps you develop insights and develop the feedback to then put back into your campaign. So if you then decided to do it again, or if it's a continual campaign, you can tweak it, and just to make your campaign more effective. And so I'm going to talk you through this template. So first of all, we think about action, and action really is a place for you to just jot down what activity you did. So in the example I've got here, I'm using social media. So in my fictional campaign, I've said we did 12 Facebook posts where we highlighted the infographic. We posted over 1 week, and we used a case study for our final post. And then I want to think about kind of conversion and results. And when I talk about conversion, I'm thinking about those actual applications. So it might be that you can actually see that you've had 4 applications over the course of the 2 months that you ran your campaign, or you had X number of phone calls. But with social media, again, you can track the number of people who saw a post and went to an application page, but there are other things to kind of think about with social media. And it might be that you managed to reach 1,000 people, you achieved 10 comments, and 2 people were referred to the website, which you could track through Google Analytics. So then when we're thinking about the evaluation, that's a point where we're thinking about the insights. And in my example here, I've said that actually of the 12 posts that we did, and we did 1 about the case study turned out to be the most popular. It received the most comments. It resonated with the most people, which is true. This is not total. This is, in our experience, what happens when we have supported Qube on their social media and with their media results. We always find that the stories that have that personal touch and that personal story are the ones that really resonate.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks very much, Jess. I hope we've sort of brought you through a process of applying a structure to looking at how you can supercharge your apprenticeships, whether that's to motivate them, the rest of the staff, to recruit, and so on. And at the end of this, you can see now we've had the template, the infographic, and the press release and the evaluation report. So you've got all the tools you need to put together your campaign and evaluate your campaign. So I guess the question now is whether it's open to the floor if anyone's got any questions they wanted to ask us, or examples of successes or challenges they have had.
I did have 2 questions from people when they initially signed up to the webinar. So this one came in before the session, so hopefully the session has actually answered most of it, but I'll pop it to you anyway. It's an anonymous question. We have our own internal marketing and comms team, but I struggle to make apprenticeships their priority. Do you have any suggestions on how to overcome this? I mean, I'm assuming today's resources and messaging is hopefully going to have answered that, but do you have anything else to sort of summarise an answer to that question?
So the question is that people are not interested in the story. Can you read what not interested in what was the challenge?
So it's from an employer. They've got an internal marketing communications team, but right. I struggle to make apprenticeships a priority. Do you understand on how? Do you have any suggestions on how to overcome this? So I think they're basically saying apprenticeships maybe aren't getting the spotlight that they'd like them to.
Yeah.
And from what you've been saying today, they can be a huge support tool, or
absolutely
PR around them could be huge support.
Yeah, so I can understand a PR team might say, well, actually, that's not priority right now because I've got to get X news out or in the middle of this crisis. And that's where I hope if you can take some control, maybe present them with a press release that you've already done, or show them, give them a photo, excuse me, and a quote that you developed, say, in your case study template. You've got some quotes. You can say, well, can we use this? If you can go to them proactively with half the work done, things like, I mean, the biggest hassle sometimes is you say, well, I need to get a quote. Well, if you've already got a quote and you've already got sign off, I mean, it may be, for example, that your comms team doesn't understand that they don't have to go round and interview the apprentice. They don't have to get the sign off. You've done all that. So taking away a lot of the steps that they might be worried about, and suggesting a solution as well. For example, it says, could we just put something on Twitter? And I've written a tweet. Could we just do this press release? Here it is. So I would say going to them with as much done as possible so that they don't have to do the work would really help in that case.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I think I'd also add there's an element of kind of highlighting those benefits as well. I think some people, I don't want to keep banging on about it, but like some people don't realise the advantages of those apprenticeships, and that's why perhaps they could be dismissive if that's the word. So I think kind of highlighting that as well in all of those techniques that Nikki was talking about, in preparing some of the copy for them, in preparing, that tweet or the suggested tweet and a suggested action, by and kind of highlighting those kind of key messages can really help. I mean, maybe it's down to maybe having just a short meeting with the team saying, these are all the benefits the apprenticeships can do, both for our current employees, both for our previous employees. I mean, you could even present the infographic to them in like a really short sort of 10-15 minute kind of catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, from some of the attendees we've got here today, a lot of large percentage already deliver apprenticeships, and we work collaboratively with them, etc. But for any employers that maybe are just starting to offer apprenticeships, they don't have a case study, for example, and it's actually that starting point that they're looking to trickle out to their internal staff. I guess the infographic would be perfect for that if they haven't got a bank of examples. The infographics instead.
I mean, you can always, just because you haven't got an apprenticeship case study, you might have other sort of trainees, you might have other more newer members of staff. All of those people can provide you with a quote to tell you about, like why they enjoy working at the company, or you could even maybe think about the other end and think about having your managing director comment about why they started the apprenticeship program, why he or she believes that it's important.
Yeah, perfect.
I think it's important there as well, Holly, to say, is something that's where the Qube account managers and our marketing team act as a really good support. Which we obviously, our employers on the call who know about that, but to the external people, we have the account managers and Holly's team who are really good at supporting with the marketing side.
Yeah. I guess it's a case of, I know that this the person that submitted this question said they have their own internal marketing and communications team, but if you did need the support from Qube as your training provider or a PR agency such as Nikki and Jess at 12PR, then there is always that solution. If it's it's an extra pair of hands or just a support with the method and the techniques that you need to get things going, by all means try and outsource at the initial stages, I guess, that you say. That leads on really well, actually, Elliot. Another question, and I think I was best to come to you for this one. Again, anonymous, which is absolutely fine. In line with lockdown and other rules, are Qube able to support us with events in communicating the apprenticeship message to our workforce? I would love to host something like an apprenticeships fair.
Yeah, so hopefully in the new world in the next few months we'll be able to get back to it face to face. But over the past year we've been holding sort of webinar events. Obviously a lot of business now have adapted to using Microsoft Teams and Zoom and various other platforms, and we found it really successful, and actually our results have been just as good, in some cases better. We've found a wider reach by actually pulling people together on Teams, and especially where you got sort of in a retail sector, for instance, we've been really successful in bringing retail managers together on Teams, which you would never be able to do if the stores are open. So we've actually found it really successful. Yeah,
I guess it's a case as well of popping some notes down when you were talking earlier, Nikki, about the different audiences and just syncing up the different messages. So whether it's one event for internal staff that you have in the canteen on a lunch break, maybe, as Elliot's saying, we could have a business development manager or account manager come along to that, whatever you felt suitable. Or if you're a larger company possibly and you're attending a recruitment fair, whether you just wanted a representative from Qube to come along and support your stand, if you're offering apprenticeship roles, obviously, then yeah, the support's definitely there from us, if required, I guess. Yeah, so they're the questions that we've had come in. Nothing else at the moment, but by all means, if you've got anything else that you need to ask after this session, please do drop us an email, and we'll obviously field it to Jess and Nikki or Elliot and the rest of the team accordingly.
Okay, super. Well, I say thank you very much, Holly. I hope that's been useful for everybody, and Elliot too. We're happy to, as you say, to answer any questions that might come later.
Brilliant. Sure. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.